everyone. Welcome to the FutureDDS Dental School Experience Series, where we help you decide which dental school is right for you. Now, every school is unique and will provide you with a different experience, and we thought who better to explain to you what a school has to offer than a student who actually goes there. Our goal in this series is to give you a first-hand perspective of every dental program in America and ultimately help you make the right decision. So today we'll be showcasing Heather Leyva, who is a D4 at Columbia University College of Dental Medicine. How are you doing today, Heather?
I'm doing great. It's a rather relaxed day for me.
Okay, I'm sure.
The past few years.
I believe it. We're excited to hear about your experiences. But just, start it up. If you could, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, where you went to undergrad, and kind of what got you interested in dentistry?
Okay. I was born in Lompoc, California. It's a small town outside of Santa Barbara on the Central Coast. I graduated high school there and then went to Auburn University in Alabama on a National Hispanic Scholarship. So that pretty much covered everything. I knew I wanted to do something in the health field, but kind of shadowed a bunch of different areas, everything from physicians to optometrists to chiropractics to a bunch of PAs, and kind of landed on dentistry after a while. I actually was pre-optometry for the majority of my undergrad career, and then switched over to dentistry like mid-junior year. So I was a little late to switch into dentistry, but the reason why I did was because I started shadowing a dentist that was actually a nonprofit dentist. So he only made enough basically to sustain him and his family in rural Alabama, and they provided services to patients that were seeking employment but were not able to get employment at that time and didn't have any insurance. So that was really inspiring. I saw some really interesting cases there and really fell in love with the fact that dentistry is a lot of patient interaction, patient management, in addition to hand skills and, using your artistic skills and physical talent to do something good for people. So that was a draw for me over, I guess, maybe like the physician field, which is a little more paperwork, a little more, okay, you're sick, prescribe this type of thing. So that's why I picked it and haven't looked back.
Okay, great. And so did you go straight from undergrad straight into dental school, or did you do like a master's program in between?
I did a gap year. So I didn't do a master's program. However, I wasn't focused on the application process while I was in school. I took, I was all out trying to get like really good grades and everything coming out. And ended up, because I chose junior year and then I also wanted to study abroad in Australia, I was like, I'm not going to do the process yet. Like next year I'll do. So I postponed it a year. I taught embryology, vertebrate development at Auburn for half a year. And then I nannied for a newborn baby for half the year.
Okay.
So by the end of my gap year, it was like a nice relaxed year, but I was like kind of bored.
Right.
I wanted to get back into school. So I really jumped into it when I got here. I was like ready to go.
Okay, great. And so let's switch gears a little bit now and actually talk about your actual school. So you go to Columbia. So we know that's in New York, but like what part of the city is it in? I know there's like Manhattan, Brooklyn. Yeah, like what borough, I guess, is it in?
It's in Manhattan, but it's in the the furthest north part of Manhattan.
Okay.
Not even where Columbia undergrad is. There's Columbia undergrad, go up another like 60 blocks or 50 blocks, and then there's Columbia dental school. And sorry, my dog is
No, you're fine. And so is the dental school connected with the medical school, or?
It is. So we actually do like our entire first 1.5 years completely integrated into the med school curriculum. So all your classes, even cadaver, gross anatomy, head and neck anatomy, even like psychiatry, like we took a full on psychiatry course with the med school there, which was really cool.
Okay.
The med school professors are just as much your professors as the medical school. They're amazing. Some like, world renowned professors. teach at Columbia. It's like, you know, a very, it's a spot that's hard to get. So that's a really cool thing about Columbia is you really get to learn from the best, which is really cool. And then after that, you go into the dental curriculum and separate paths from the med school.
Okay. And so 2 questions then. So how big is the class when you all are integrated? And then how big is the class once you all become separated?
So for me, and I'm not sure what it is for the first years now, but for me, I think it's pretty much the same. It was like, I want to say 150 or 200 med students and then 80 of us.
Okay.
So we were like a quarter to a third. And 80, I feel like is a pretty good number because any less than that, like there's only probably a few schools that have way less than that, but that would be like maybe a little like too close for comfort.
Yeah. That's what I figure also. Like I'll hear about schools that have like 45 students.
Yeah. You would have to be, that would be like basically like a small group.
Right.
Whereas some schools like NYU, the other school in Manhattan is like 400 people per class. And we do something similar to NYU where we break into groups. So like I'm in group B and that is like totally organized down the line where like I have a big and a little both in my group and we pass on cases to each other. So there's like continuity of care. If we have a problem, we have like a stepping ladder of who to go to. So it's a lot easier than just kind of like emailing the dean and be like, hey, help, you know? So that works well, even for a smaller class of 80.
Definitely. And so I know that you previously mentioned the great faculty. That was definitely a great plus for going to Columbia. But what were some of the other like key factors that really made you decide on, you know, choosing Columbia rather than all the other schools that you got into?
So my last like 2 that I'd kind of narrowed it down to were Columbia and UCSF in San Francisco. I'm from California, so I had in-state tuition there. However, the cost of living was actually much higher there than in upper Manhattan. So when you averaged it out over the 4 years, it ended up being like not that much more to go to Columbia. But the main reason I ended up choosing it was because my boyfriend and I moved here from Auburn and we've been dating since high school. So we moved from California to Auburn, moved here, and he was a newly graduated journalist at the time, not dentist. Journalist at the time. So he went to New York to kind of be his like springboard into the journalism field. So basically between San Francisco and New York City, the choice was his. However, you know, it wasn't really a second choice to me. It was kind of like, you know, I was excited about whatever. And New York City is amazing. I mean, it's nice to be a little, not in right downtown New York City, because it's like the first 2 years, you don't need that kind of distraction. Like you need a little bit quieter, like a little bit, you know, you can take the subway downtown, but like you want to be able to study lots of hours, at least for me. Like I probably overstudied for every class. So
impossible.
Yeah. But for Columbia in general, like some reasons why I went there, other than just location and great professors, which I didn't really even consider at the time of applications, was I had heard, and it's very true, that Columbia is every single student, I would say, like in my class, is gung-ho about something. So they're like really into oral surgery, or they're really into ASDA, or they try their hardest to get somewhere in whatever like subfield they want to be in, which is really nice. There's nobody there that's like, oh, my dad made me go to dental school and he wants me to work in his practice. Like there's really nobody there. It's highly specialty based. So I would say like at least 60 to 70% of Columbia specializes, which I'm not specializing. Like, I want to do general, and I came in thinking maybe peds, but over time really just loved general, restorative, cosmetic dentistry. And I just kind of fell into that and like loved it. So now I'm doing a GPR.
Great. Okay. So that definitely makes sense. But 70 is Even that acceptance rate into a specialty program is
No,
amazing.
that's like I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's more than half. It's like I think it's 60 to 70, but that includes like overtime if people do a GPR and then like go back to do endo or whatever. So,
Okay.
it's a little bit like I would say straight out of like the match process, it's probably 60% specialty.
And that's still awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's still
Almost
amazing.
everybody gets really high up on their list. So that's a really good thing if you're like, I want to become a dentist so I can become an orthodontist.
Mhm.
Like there's a good likelihood you'll be able to do that in
Yeah,
Columbia.
so if you want to specialize, go to Columbia.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so let's now we're gonna go back in time a little bit, a couple of years for you. And let's talk about your interview process. Granted, it's probably changed a little bit since you went through it, but if you can you kind of just like walk us through how your day went?
Oh, walk you through it. I had so many interviews right next to each other that um I know that they like gave us a tour of the campus, which has changed a lot. There's been a huge new medical school building, which is like beautiful and overlooks the Hudson River. That's been added recently. Recently being in like the past 2-3 years, and then a new clinic floor that wasn't there when I started. So when I started, like some of the facilities, I was like, maybe they could like use a little update.
Right, right.
But now, like since then, they really have updated everything. And then it was like a one-on-one interview, just one person, which like for some people, it was like they had, you know, the most relaxed, chill, like, oh yeah, whatever. Oh, like I know the practice your grandma worked at, like, just like very like laid back and chill. My particular professor that interviewed me was a little bit stern, and I like couldn't read her. I thought that I was like too like bubbly and silly, and she was like serious. I don't know.
You got the serious face?
And she just like I thought she didn't like me.
Mhm.
So I would like came out of that like trying to get feedback from like the people giving us the tour, like, well, what if like I didn't think it went that well? What do you think my chances are? And like super worried about it. But then I saw the professor later in the day when we had like a tour of the clinic, and she like waved to me, and I was like, maybe
Good sign.
read that a little bit. But I went out of that like, whatever, I'm not gonna get in, but it was a good go.
Right.
Worth the trip to New York,
Right,
whatever.
right, just a visit.
Yeah. And then I got in the first day, that the December 1st, like admissions day. So it was like I think NYU called me first, and then Columbia called me after. And I was like, oh, I guess it went fine.
Right,
So I think I'm a little bit bad at reading interviews, whether they went well or not.
right. But thankfully it went well though.
Yeah, it
Thankfully
went
it went
well.
well. And so now obviously you started after that. What about the transition? Like, did they have like a week of orientation, or did they kind of just like throw you all into the fire?
Oh no, we had a crazy orientation week. It was,
Okay.
I'm not going to go into details, but it was like every cool, like off touristy thing in New York. Like we went to a cool Broadway play, and we like went to Puglia's, which is like an Italian restaurant downtown where you dance on the tables and drink wine. And we did a boat cruise on the East River, and like all these really, really fun things to like wear us out and bond us. And, only the people in my class were invited to. It wasn't like significant others or anything. So it really kind of bonded us, and everyone kind of got to know each other. And then classes started out, I would say the first like week was pretty like just introductions, like, syllabus week, same thing as undergrad.
Yeah.
And people were still like recovering from
Before.
and then they were like, all right, here's the information you need to know by like 3 weeks from now. And it was like my entire undergrad biochemistry course in like 3 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm never going to be able to know this.
Right.
But I mean, you kind of surprise yourself with how much you can shove in that little head of yours.
I tell people that all the time. They're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, you will shock yourself.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information, but you just get into a certain pace and you just are able to remember all this information.
And I was worried that coming off a gap year, I would be like not used to all that at once. But
Right.
I almost think that like a little break and not being worn out at that point was like good. Like the people that graduated like late from undergrad or took summer courses after undergrad and then went directly to that, like that had to have been exhausting,
Yeah.
you know?
It had to be.
But for me, I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna ace this test, and you know, I mean, for the most part, I thought, you know, oh, I'll just ace this one just so I get on the right track, and then like after that, you know, we'll kind of take it day by day and see. But that attitude, once you like whatever attitude you kind of go in with, you kind of end up keeping the whole time. So like the people that started the class, like started the school being like, oh, I'm gonna try to not do that much, which really was like very, very minimal at Columbia. Struggled a little bit more. They all made it. Everyone passes, but struggled a little. It ended up being harder for them in the end. The people that like put a lot of effort in at first, like ended up kind of just like floating through. So
Yeah, right. It's easier to like slowly come down than to try to
yeah,
like fight your way up, definitely.
ramp it up. Yeah, exactly.
And everybody, it's also something I tell people, like people say like the whole like C's get degrees or whatever it may be, but I'm kind of like in dental school, if you have that mentality, then you might get D's. And once you start getting into that realm, that's when you start getting like academic probations, and it's just it gets really tricky for some people, you know. So
Part about Columbia, and this is really desirable to people. Columbia accepts much higher like DAT scores and GPAs to an extent than other schools. Like I got a 22 on my DAT and a 23 on the PAT portion of it. And I was like low medium of my class. Like people get crazy high scores at Columbia. There are people that got like 18s and 19s that were accepted, but for the most part, it's really, really high. Like they had to have some like something else, you know, big on their application to be able to get in with that. But I found that once you're here, they really want you to do well. So it's pass fail. It's pass fail. It was pass fail honors at the time. So I like tried to honor every course just because that's my personality and I go above and beyond for everything.
Why not?
But the people that, you know, really just like wanted to pass or whatever, even if you failed a few exams, as long as you met with the professor and discussed kind of strengths and weaknesses and maybe got a little tutoring, and you could retake the test and pass the class. So there was a lot of help in that way. So like it's kind of like you have to do really well beforehand, but once you're there, it's like you can have struggle points. Like everybody has struggle points, you know, whether it's overwhelming anxiety through dental school and you have to get some like mental help, that is a struggle point for some people, or you know, really trying to balance work life balance, that's a struggle point for some people. And some people like genetics was a struggle for them, or gross anatomy or whatever, and Columbia does do a good job of kind of making sure that everyone's on the right track.
That's very reassuring. You know, I think a lot of people worry about that. Just like, will they receive that support once they get into general school? So, you know, it's great that Columbia definitely provides that. But now I want to ask you, this might be asking a lot, but if you can you kind of walk us through a day of first year? Right, exactly. I'm talking about like 8 a.m. We would start class from like 8 to 9. Then we would do this from 9 to 11.
Okay, all right, let me try. I'm gonna give you a basic of what I did, although it's different now. So people coming in will have a little bit different experience.
Okay,
And each student has a different experience as well. So for me, the first like year plus, I went to class every single class. That was just like, I was like, wow, these professors are crazy, like researchers that did all this amazing, like groundbreaking research in this area. I'm going to go to class so I can like see them, you know, and talk to them and interact with them. And I raised my hand in class and, you know, I was like that annoying person.
No, you're fine.
But a lot of people didn't go to class, and you didn't have to. There were a few classes like gross anatomy where it's like a lab, you have to go. But the morning classes. Like every morning there was classes from 9 to noon, and I would go every time. I would like get up, make breakfast, drink some coffee, walk my dog, and then go to class, and like I would enjoy it. I liked that. And then after class, after the end of the day, I would be a little bit ahead than if I didn't go to class, meaning like I had seen the information once.
Right.
I would go through and like organize information. And then like a week before the exam, I would, well, I'll get into this maybe in a little bit, but basically the week before the exam, I would like start really studying like a few hours a day. And then a couple days before the exam, like study like 10 hours a day for it.
Right.
But day to day, I would go to class and then a normal 1 hour lunchtime. And then afterwards, it would be like twice a week, there was gross anatomy, and which is cadaver lab. So you dissect a whole human body, everything, even the muscles, like every system, organs, everything. Not just like head and neck. And then after that, we would have pre-clinic, which was like hand scales, drilling the little board with the little like,
Yeah.
you know, the or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, Columbia really didn't do much like wax up stuff. I think they should do more. That I would say that's like one of the weaknesses of Columbia is like, we do like, it's like a virtual tooth anatomy course or something like that. But it's like a module type of thing that you do online. And I think people would have benefited in the long run if we had done more wax ups. I did some just because I was really interested. I would like, you know, Google it and like stuff like that. But most people didn't. So if I didn't have an exam coming up, I would spend time just like kind of like exploring the preclinic, like squirting out different materials to see what the consistent, how fast it dried, and like, you know, making things out of the materials just so I could kind of like get a grasp on that. And then, you know, test weeks were a little lighter load. So then I would study for the exams and do the exams. And of course, like my nerves would be up like right before the exams, like normal. But not so different in that realm from college. I felt like the exam tension was like the same to me. And now they still don't have to go to the classes, but it's I think it's only pass fail. We had actually for the first semester we had the same exact exams as the med school, and then the second semester we had like exams that were written by the dental professor so they could throw in some like little bits and pieces of dental stuff. Now the first years do the entire medical exams. However, it's take home, so it's more relaxed. You have to sign like an honor code saying you won't cheat or whatever.
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah, so, like I'm in my bed right now. Like people take it from the bed. Yeah.
What?
We had like 1 or 2 exams that we did like that, but for the most part, you know, we went into a class and was proctored or whatever. But in addition to that, I think 70% was a failing grade, and now I think it's like 50%. But it's the medical school exams, which are more like the exam, the CBSE, which is to get into surgery residency. They're very like, this patient presents to you with this and that. Their lab values are this. Like, what do they have wrong? Why do they have it wrong? What could you do to fix them? Like, what are the medications? What are the other medications you could use? And then they'll spring something else on you. Okay, now what could it be? Like, what autoimmune disorder? You know, so it's like more involved than just like, which chamber of the heart this is, you know? So for us, it was like the exams were a little easier, but we had to get a 70 to pass. And now I think the exams are much harder, but they have to get a 50 to pass, and they can sit at home and do it.
Okay, that's interesting. I wonder why Columbia decided to make that change. That's actually the first school that I've heard of that tests like that.
Yeah, I think in part it was to have like a full integration with the med school.
Okay.
I don't know like how their testing works at all, because when I was in those courses, it was graded the same as we were.
Right.
But I think I don't know, maybe they only have to do the same as well. However, they have to take like the USMLE or whatever the med school like exams are. So for the people in dental school that were like, I don't care about, you know, pulmonology, I'm not gonna try that hard for that. Like the med school students had to, because otherwise they'd be screwed in the long run. Whereas the dental students like, Like,
Nope, I'll never see that again.
yeah, exactly. Like, how much are you going to see, like different types of hernias or whatever,
Right.
like not that much. But for me, I was like, wow, that's so interesting. I like want to know all about this. So,
Right.
I went all out, but you don't have.
All right, well, great. So, say somebody's watched this interview, and they're like, wow, Columbia seems awesome. What's something that you would tell them to make sure that they have on their application? I know that you said that, typically people who get in have high GPAs and high DAT scores, but is that the main thing that you think that people should focus on, or should they make sure that they have X amount of community service hours or whatever it may be?
I would say Columbia specifically is more concerned with the DAT score than anything else.
Okay.
Um, if you're somebody that gets a good DAT score, like definitely consider going to Columbia, because you're going to be surrounded with a bunch of people that are in the same kind of boat as you are. People that it's like cool to do really well.
Yeah, right.
So, like, back in like high school or something, it was like, you didn't want to brag about like, be like, oh no, I like party or whatever, but
I'm cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm cool. No, I get B's. Like,
Right.
now it's like, you're cool if you like do really well. So,
Right.
I think there's that. That's a draw for people that are, total overachievers. Columbia is a good place to go. I mean, I wasn't really asked about, I guess I was asked a little bit about, like, I went on a dental service trip in like 2013. So like my senior year of college, where I went to Costa Rica. There were dentists that were heading the different groups. And then they like, basically it was a lot of assisting, but some procedural work as well, like minor procedural work. Basically like they would do things 90% of the way and then we would like finish up basically. Like they would get a tooth really, really loose and then we could extract it or whatever. Um, and that was really, really a good experience and made me really fall in love with dentistry. I mean, I remember that last day I was in Costa Rica, we like had a beach day, like one like off day at the end of the week. And I was like, oh, I really just want to like get back in the clinic. It was like so many kids. That's what made me think about peds to begin with. So I would suggest maybe doing something like that, especially if you're not really sure if you want to do dentistry. Like maybe you have a parent or a sibling that does it, but you're not, maybe you're in between a couple of things. Yeah. I would say it's something that's really important to do. I don't know how exactly it works with like the regulations now in terms of going abroad and like doing actual like
procedures.
Yeah. I would think it would be mostly assisting, which is probably best case scenario. But it's really a powerful experience regardless. So try to look up one of those.
One of those mission trips, definitely.
And you can just Google those. I mean, those are like everywhere.
They are. And granted, they cost a little bit of money, but I mean, I agree with you. I think they're definitely worth the experience.
Yeah, I think mine was like, I want to say like $1,300. So it wasn't cheap. But that included like everything, the plane flight and the lodging and like the everything. Plus you could like go around your town and ask for donations and you could bring like a whole bag of donations with you. So it is expensive, but I would say like if you're debating that versus like one extra prep course for something, like I would say the dental service trip was a better bargain, especially like if you're going to dental schools that would accept 17s to 19s on the DAT, I would say that would be more important for one of those. Whereas Columbia is just like annoying that they're like, oh, only 20 whatever.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. Okay, great. So now a more personal question. I know, and I'm sure you know as well. I know dental school is extremely, or can be very stressful. There's a recent topic within the field just based on mental health. I want to ask you kind of how did you maintain your mental health throughout your entire dental school experience? Is there like any tips that you would tell people to do, or what did you do to be successful?
So one like tip I would give to students going into dental school, or even you could start this in college or whatever, is to make like to-do lists. I know that sounds like dumb. Like, oh yeah, everyone tells me to make a to-do list. But if you make like a weekly one, like this week I want to get this chore done, this chore done, this chore done. And then you have like a monthly one, and then you have like a yearly one. Like say you want by the end of the year to be able to, I don't know, say write your name with your right hand, but only looking in the mirror that's in your left hand. Like that's something that was suggested to me first year to start practicing maxillary arch dentistry, really. I mean, so something like that, like by the end of June, I went to get so good at signing my name that I can do it just looking in the mirror, or like something that will expand your skills without overwhelming you. And then each time you like check something off the list, whether it's like I need to make a doctor's appointment by Friday, or I need to talk to this professor about this bad score I got on this exam, or about this section that I really didn't understand by this day. And then when you check it off, celebrate. Like go find a cool restaurant you haven't been to, or go like do some hot yoga, or go have a glass of wine, go to a happy hour, whatever it is. Like even if it's small, if you felt like, thank God that's off my plate, go celebrate that you did that, because that's something that people like punish themselves for celebrating for things. And I think that that's really important. I mean, there were so many times where it's like, yeah, this is one out of like 70 exams I'm going to take, but like, I'm going to go out and do whatever to celebrate. Whether it's, you know, even if it's something small, like I'm going to go take my dogs down and explore the Hudson River, you know, anything that's kind of releases your mind from, you know, being so on top of things kind of helps. Scout, stop. I'm sorry. My dog is growling at dogs out.
You're fine.
So that's something that really helped. For me personally, I love cooking. I've loved it since I was a little kid. My dad used to teach me how to cook certain things. I'm half Mexican and like 6% Native American. So I recently, just like a month ago, 2 months ago, learned how to nixtamalize my own corn. I like bought corn from Oaxaca, Mexico. Nixtamalization is basically the grinding process of corn that you then turn it into tortillas eventually. So I made my own fresh masa and made, you know, I was like a tortilla lady for a day. Like it was awesome. I had like a margarita while I was doing it. It was like a fun Sunday activity. And that's the kind of thing that like for me is really nice, because it's some actual like short-term gratification. Definitely. Where dentistry, and especially like the first 2 years of dentistry, where you're not seeing real like results of your work for a while. Like once you get into clinic, you're like, oh, finally I can like help people and do all these cool things. And before then you're like, I feel like I'm just dragging on and on, one after the other. And if you can break it up by things that you're like, and now I learned how to play a song on the guitar or whatever it is, like that's something that really relaxes your mind, I think. For me, like anxiety is a situational thing for me. So like some exams I feel like my blood pressure is, you know, stage 2 hypertension. But some exams I'm not as worried about. And some people have a harder time with all of the exams. I mean, some people just, the anxiety of the exams, and especially if you have outside family, family issues or whatever it is that comes up, you know, things come up. You're in dental school for 4 years. Like something is going to happen that's stressful to you in your 4 years. Like this past year, my dad got in a accident where he fell and had a traumatic brain injury. And I was debating having to take off school to go to California to help take care of him. Luckily, he recovered very well from this, but it was, you know, extremely stressful when I'm trying to, I have patients being like, oh, I need to come in for this and my temporary fell off or whatever. And then at the same time, I'm like, I need to attend to my family. Like those things are really stressful. And the biggest thing I would suggest is don't just bottle in yourself, because it's malignant. I mean, it'll grow and grow, and you won't be able to get rid of it eventually, even if you have close friends or family that you can talk to. Really, the best thing is to get professional help. And Columbia does have a really good wellness program, with everything from mental health help and mental health symposiums where you can go and learn about different things, how to de-stress, stuff like that, to self-defense classes and wellness classes and acupuncture and like stuff like that, that like, you know, to each their own with that kind of thing. But they offer a lot of stuff like that and are constantly, I mean, I'm getting emails like even now, like every week saying like, if you need like any aid, any help with this type of thing, you know, reach out. One time I even, my psychiatry professor, who is a professor of the med school, I had a friend that needed help. And I reached out to her via email and I was like, hey, this isn't really related to school. I have a personal problem that, you know, I have a friend that may, you know, need some psychiatric counseling or something. Do you have any resources? And she was amazing. I mean, emailed me back right away, sent me a bunch of different areas that I could try, sent me different studies that that person could apply and see if that they qualified for, and was just there for me, which was really, really nice, even though it didn't have to do with me personally. And it was a really personal thing to ask like a professor of 400 students.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
No, definitely. And so I was gonna ask you, had you had any like experiences where, you know, you looked back at your dental school decision and you were like, wow, you know what, I'm glad that I came to Columbia. And I mean, that situation right there where you're talking about your friend, that kind of seems like that type of situation where you really did appreciate why you know, chose Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, in every school, there's frustrations, like administrative frustrations, like, oh, we're not getting enough of this certain type of case or whatever there is, or like, oh, the chairs are, you know, some chair is broken or whatever it is. Like, there's always frustrations. That happens in every school. Like,
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
every school, that happens.
Definitely.
Everyone's like, oh, you know, everyone goes into the lounge and like rants about this and that. We love to do it. We like to gossip, like just how it is. But one example of something that was really helpful to me, and it was another kind of personal professor thing, was during gross anatomy, my first exam. It was a group exam actually, because the dental students only had to take the head and neck one alone. You could use your lab group for the exams for the organ-based one and the musculoskeletal-based exams. So I was the one that was writing down the answers. And basically there was numbers that were hanging above the cadavers, and then there were numbers that were placed on the actual parts that were to be identified. And I was going by the numbers on the ceiling, and apparently we were supposed to be going by the numbers on the bodies. So I like totally messed up the answers for the exam. And this was like a live exam where everyone's going around the room and like all this stuff. So I was like terrified. And then I just started crying, because that's just me. I just start crying at things. And I was like freaking out. And then like at the end, I was panicking so much that at the end of the exam, I realized that like I had one, like, I think either one extra or one less answer to the exam. So it wasn't just that we were off and we could rearrange it. It was like I royally screwed this one up. And I was just like, you know, in the stairwell with my lab mates who were like with my hair trying to settle down. And so we go into the professor and I'm bawling, and you know, this is like this like badass lady professor who like is like really high up in our school, and like I was like, you know, I knew she was nice, but I'd never really talked to her. And she was like, it's okay, this happens all the time, no worries. She sat down with us and like rearranged the sections, basically rearranged it, and just only made us miss that one extra, basically just crossed out the extra answer.
Right,
Like,
right,
even like
right.
the question where it was she like crossed out the wrong answer. She was like, all right, you guys got an 89. Like there on the spot. She wasn't going to grade these exams for like, you know, a week or something.
Right,
Like graded on the spot just to like make me feel better.
right. Maybe
Like,
not
oh
panic.
my God, like thank God. Like I went from 0 to 100 so quickly because of how such compassion for like this young student that really tries hard and like was in there the night before, like looking at everything and then like royally screwed it up.
That sounds like a very tense situation. And it's
Yeah.
funny, a couple of people have done that at my school too, because we have the same type of thing where it's like a bell goes off. You have like a minute.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
everybody moves in the line. No, definitely. No,
Yeah.
that's actually very funny. But okay, I want to ask you now about a clinic. So I think you had kind of mentioned that, you know, for the first 2 years, you don't really see patients like that. What's that transition like? Do you uh, third year you just get your first patient, or do you kind of start assisting within the clinic your first and second year, and then you go into clinic?
So first year we have like a mentorship where like right now I have a first year that shadows me.
Mm.
But second year it's like a more, I guess, more hefty schedule in terms of you're doing all like the cross and perio, like all the preclinic stuff. So
Mhm.
you're pretty much primarily in preclinic. I think there's like one or two assists you do, like endo assist or like something like that, but you don't really get in there second year. And then like in the summer it's like bam, here are your patients. So to some people it's a little intimidating, but I was like ready at that point. I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna treat patients. And you know, the harder you work in preclinic, the easier the transition is, but it's always scary. I mean,
Yeah.
in my first I think three patients failed the appointment. So like they didn't show up.
Yeah.
So I was like, by the fourth one, I was like ready. Like I'm like, all right, this person better come, or maybe I just have bad luck, you know? So it is abrupt at Columbia. I think some schools kind of filter you in, like you do like only class ones or like stuff like that. But Columbia is like one of the first things I was doing was a removable partial denture, which was involved. You know, I did like a phlebotomy like right off the bat, like within the first couple weeks, with a lot of assistance, a lot of hand holding, but you know, you just get in there. One thing that you can do that I did a lot was you can go into oral surgery starting like basically the moment you get approved to start clinic in the summer. And you, anytime that you have like a patient cancellation or you know on a patient schedule, you can go into oral surgery and practice stuff. So whether that's a inferior alveolar nerve block or extracting a tooth or just medical history or just learning the axiom system, so like the dental record system, that's super helpful, especially because you're not as nervous like doing a block for the first time on a patient that you're not going to be continually seeing.
Right.
Like you're like, okay, like I can ask a resident, help me point out where I should go, the anatomical features and everything like that. And you're not like kind of more on your own.
Right.
In clinic, like when you're on your own patient, of course you like want to make a really good impression and you don't want to be like act like you don't know. Like I don't think my first few patients like ever knew that they were my first few patients.
That's amazing though. That's good. That's really good. Okay, great. But I guess we're at the tail end of our interview now, Heather. And I want you to give your, you know, that like one golden nugget of advice that you would give to anybody who's applying to dental school. They might not even necessarily want to go to Columbia, but just like applying in general. What's that one golden piece of advice that you would give
Um, that's a hard one.
It's hard. It's hard. Especially after the entire interview, right? It's hard.
I guess just make sure that it's something that you really want to do. I mean, there are so many fields out there in the health field and not. There are so many options for you. Don't go into it without like shadowing and making sure that you really like it. And there are some areas where you may not like, you know, but for the most part, like go into it knowing that this is something that you want to really invest your future in. I mean, it's a huge investment. It's not like you can just drop off and then have all these loans to pay off. Like you you really need to know that this is something we want to do. And that's a hard decision, especially because for me, I felt like people were always like, oh, you have time. You have time. Oh, you can decide later. You have time. And then it was like, suddenly I had to decide.
Yeah.
I even took a gap year, and so make sure it's something you want to do, and make sure that you're preserving your happiness in the process.
Yeah.
Don't get so into it and so into studying and so into this that you don't take breaks for yourself. That's so incredibly important to not get burnt out and to work your butt off, but also, celebrate all the little steps. So I think that preservation of self-wellness and making sure that this is what you really want to do in the future are the two most important things.
Definitely. Heather, thank you so much. I'm sure, people are going to want to reach out to you and ask you more questions. What's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
Probably a DM on Instagram. I check it regularly. So it's Heather C. Leyva, Leyva. Yeah, go ahead and reach out. And you could also Facebook, search my first and last name and Facebook message me if you don't have an Instagram. But yeah, I'm always up for responses, especially now. I, pretty much done with.
Yeah, you're done. Congratulations.
I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready to go. So go for it. Shoot me questions. I'm happy to even give you a call and talk you through whatever it is. And
Great.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Heather. Everybody, make sure you reach out and ask her any questions that you have, and I'll definitely put the link to your Instagram, or I guess your Instagram name, in the description box for everybody. But on behalf of FutureDDS and all of our subscribers, once again, thank you so much for taking the time out today. Your great insight, your great experiences, we really did appreciate it, and we really did enjoy it. So thank you again. And also, best of luck to you and your program coming up. Yeah, I know that's major.
And thank you. You're doing such a good thing for these, little baby dentists.
Hey, doing what we can. We always think about what we wish we had,
Yeah. Can't wait to see what the field brings us.
Yeah, we're all excited. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. But everybody, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. Also hit the subscribe and the notification bell so that you know whenever we post new content. But until next time, see y'all later.